Paul here with another episode of Butt Crack Cycles. If you're brand new to this channel, if this video is how you are finding me, usually this channel is all about old Harleys, but today's episode really applies to any motorcycle. Our topic today is like some tips and tricks and just advice for newer riders, people who are starting their journey into motorcycling. It's no secret on this channel that I am a newer rider myself. This is only my third season riding, but I've logged some pretty good amount of miles in that time. These are some tips and some stuff that helped me get comfortable and confident on a motorcycle pretty quickly. So if you're just now coming into motorcycling and you're looking for stuff that was real world useful for someone else who's pretty new, like stuff that helped me, jump into it and with a run and start, I think you'll find some good information in this video. If you are an experienced rider, somebody who's been riding for 15 or 20 years, chances are you will still find something in this video that's useful. I would ask you, if you're an experienced rider, as you watch this video, to add your experience in the comments. If there's something that I said that you think is wrong, tell me. If there's something that I didn't say, if there's some sort of tip or trick or some advice that somebody gave you along the way, please add that in the comments, because you'll be helping me learn to be a better rider, and you will also be helping anybody who watches this video as they read through the comments. All right, let's jump on the bike and get to talking. So usually on this channel, the moto vlogs are done stream of consciousness style, where I am riding around and talking while I ride. But I actually dropped my GoPro a couple days ago and broke it. So y'all are gonna get some footage of me and my buddy Chris riding to the OTR show this last weekend, as well as just me doing this voiceover. Finally, if you hate the moto vlogs and you'd rather watch motorcycles themselves and me working on them, I do 2 episodes a week. Moto vlogs are on Wednesdays, the working on the bikes is on Sundays, so just have 3 days of patience and you can watch a new episode of me turning wrenches. All right. Jumping into the topic at hand. Like I said, I've really only seriously been riding for 3 years. I've talked about this in some other videos, but I bought my first bike way back in 2010, but I only owned it for a couple of months and then immediately sold it, and then didn't own another motorcycle until a few years ago. And from there, I pretty much just never looked back. I was just like, this is it, this is for me. I think probably the biggest thing that gets people coming into a motorcycle, if they're an adult and they have only just been driving cars their entire life, is just getting familiar with being on 2 wheels. That's a really uncomfortable feeling for many people. You're exposed, you have to remember to put your foot down when you stop because you're going to fall over. The way a motorcycle turns and corners is completely different than a car. We'll talk about stuff like counter steering and such later in this video. But yeah, just getting familiar and comfortable being on 2 wheels is hard for a lot of adult Americans, I would say. Most people have a bicycle as a kid, but as soon as they get big enough to have anything else, they just get rid of it. You could probably do a whole episode about bicycle culture in the US, but that was never the case for me. I love riding a bicycle. I have several bikes. I have a road bike, though I don't ride it very often just because I don't get into the whole wearing spandex and taking up half of the road on a 55 mile an hour highway. But I do really love mountain bikes and what they call sort of gravel biking, i.e. just riding trails and dirt roads and paths and such like that. So when I got on a motorcycle seriously a few years ago, being on 2 wheels was really easy for me because I had been on 2 wheels for years. And so I would suggest, if you are just sort of struggling with that, go buy yourself a mountain bike. It will teach you a lot. If you can get comfortable with the way a bicycle turns and corners and controlling it, especially down a trail, that will help your control of a motorcycle greatly. Riding a mountain bike, or really any bicycle, teaches you to look where you want to go. It sounds simple, and it is simple. And by that I mean, as you turn your head and look into a corner or out of a corner at a corner exit, the motorcycle is going to just sort of naturally follow where you're looking. This is also especially really useful at slow speed stuff, when you're like trying to make a slow speed U-turn and stay inside of the road without running off into the grass. If you try and just be stiff and upright and turn the bike, you won't turn. But if you can turn your head and look where you want to go, and then let yourself lean the bike will follow where you look. And a mountain bike, or any bicycle really, is a fantastic way to learn that. You can also sort of like send it a little bit on a bike. You can learn how to ride quickly and hard down trails with a whole lot less consequences. Yeah, crashing a 20-pound bike into a tree at 10 or 12 miles an hour hurts, but it hurts a whole lot less than crashing a 700-pound motorcycle into a tree at 60 miles an hour. So the sort of risk factor is a lot lower, and it lets you make mistakes without such a big consequence, both to yourself and to your bike. The other great thing about riding a bicycle is that it teaches you to have separate front and rear brakes. That's oftentimes, when I talk to people who are new riders, one of the things that really screws them up coming from a car. You know, in a car you push the middle pedal down and all four wheels stop, but on a motorcycle you have independent front and rear brakes, and a bicycle has that too. Something that it will also teach you is to avoid target fixation. Again, back to that look where you want to go. Say you're on a mountain bike coming down a trail and there's a jogger and they've stopped in the middle of the trail and they're playing on their phone. Well, if you just stare right at that person in the middle of the trail, chances are you're going to run right into them. You look where you want to go. If you can learn to avoid that target fixation and look around that person to an escape route, you can go around them. This applies to a motorcycle too. You're riding down the street, someone pulls out in front of you. If you just stare into the back of that car, into their taillights, chances are you're going to run into the back of that car. But if you can learn to avoid that target fixation and look around the vehicle to an escape path, you'll be a much safer and a much better prepared rider to deal with unexpected things in the road, whether it's a car, a person, a deer, etc. And all of that is easy to learn in a low-risk environment on a bicycle. Finally, my last thing about bikes, and then we'll move on to something else, is that it's going to get you in better shape. Like it or not, riding a motorcycle, if you want to ride one at least quickly, requires some amount of physical fitness and core strength. I realize this is mostly a Harley channel, and most Harley riders are big, overweight folks, just sort of in general. And I would challenge you to look at yourself and look at your body, and if you want to be a better rider, getting in a little bit better shape will help you with that. So you're probably saying, all right, Paul, well, great, fine, yeah, I need to go buy a bicycle, but it doesn't teach you anything about throttle control or how to work a clutch. And you're right, it doesn't. And the next thing that I want to say is learn to ride a dirt bike. In the 10 years or so I went between motorcycles, I've lost track of how many little cheap Hondas and such, Yamahas that I bought over the years, and all the dirt bikes of my buddies, and we'd just go screw around riding out in the woods or go to trails and such. And a dirt bike, again, is a really great way to learn the control situation of a motorcycle. It's exactly the same of any modern bike, at least. If you're riding an old iron head that's right-hand shift, things are different here. But I digress. The dirt bike is going to teach you throttle control and clutch. If you can drive a stick shift car, learning a clutch on a motorcycle is pretty simple and easy. But yeah, a dirt bike, again, is a really great way to step up from a bicycle and be comfortable on two wheels, be comfortable with the controls, learn how a bike goes under you, learn what too much front brake does, what too much rear brake does, and just how to, do things like stand up on the foot pegs over obstacles and bumps and let the bike sort of glide underneath you and bump underneath you. And again, it's at lower consequences. You can get pretty hurt riding a dirt bike, but maybe less hurt than a motorcycle. I don't know. I say that, I've had some buddies who've gotten pretty messed up on dirt bikes. So going from there, let's say you've been riding a bicycle, you've been riding a dirt bike, and you're comfortable with two wheels, and you're comfortable with hand throttle and individual brakes. So now you want to go buy a motorcycle. Well, I would sort of urge you to pick an appropriate first bike. I've talked about this some in another video. I talked about it in my video about why I hate baggers, but there's a lot of guys who go out and buy an Electra Glide or a Road King or Road Glide or a really big bike as their very first bike just because they feel like they have to be macho. And I would say shelf the macho-ness and shelf the pride. Don't be afraid to go buy a little Honda Rebel or something small that is easy to control and fairly cheap. And if you do drop your first bike, which you probably will do, it's not terribly expensive and you don't feel like you just dropped this $40,000 motorcycle. So pick an appropriate motorcycle for your first bike. Pick something that's not super overpowered. Pick something that's generally smaller and that you can control. I'm sure someone's going to say, you know, they started riding on a Gixxer 1000 and they're fine. And I've actually met someone who's told me that in person. Chances are, I would guess that they probably are lacking some fundamental motorcycle skills, and a lot of their just basic control of a bike is probably not as good as somebody who started riding on like a Ninja 300. Then from there, I would say go ride. Like, seriously, it sounds so stupid, but the biggest thing that has helped me become a decent rider, I don't claim to be an expert rider, I'm far from good, I'm still learning, is just going to ride my motorcycles. In the first year that I rode, I owned 4 different motorcycles, one of which I still have, which is my Ironhead Sportster. But I had my little Honda Rebel 500, my Ironhead. I bought a Honda CB900, which is like the 919, the Hornet, and that little red Evo Sportster that you all saw on this channel. And in my first season of riding, my first year of riding, over those 4 bikes, I put over 9,000 miles on them combined. At that point in time, I was renting a shop with my buddy Chris, who I'm riding with in this video, and I would just leave my service truck there for when I would go do road service calls and just ride my motorcycles back and forth to work and like anywhere that I could. And just putting that mileage on those bikes in that first year really just helped with the confidence and the skills, and you just kind of learn as you ride. My second year of riding was my Ironhead again, that same red Evo Sportster. I bought my Shovelhead, and there were a couple other bikes that I bought and sold and flipped in that second year. I didn't ride quite as much that second year, 7,000 miles according to my records. And now here on year 3, I've actually slowed down some since I'm now working from home out of my little shop behind the house and then doing mobile service on the big diesel stuff. Again, I'm dispatching myself from home. The shop got sold, so Chris and I are no longer renting that shop, which means that I'm around 4,000 to 5,000 miles this year, and those miles have basically all been on my Ironhead and my Shovelhead, with most of them being on the Ironhead. The point of all that to say is that in 3 seasons of riding, I racked up about 20,000 miles, and that has been just the best thing for me. All of the theory in the world, all of the YouTube videos, all the books you can read, all the classes you can take, none of that really replaces real world riding time and just butt time. So my advice to you is, if you're a new rider, is to not be scared. Get a bike you're comfortable on, get comfortable on 2 wheels, and just get out there and ride the thing. Following that up, I would say challenge yourself to ride in different environments. Go do parking lot drills. Don't be afraid to lean that bike over. I still go do parking lot drills fairly regularly. Challenge yourself to ride in different places. Y'all often see me riding on, sort of empty country back roads, and that's nice, but it can also sort of lull you into a false sense of complacency that you're a good or safe rider. So sometimes it's nice to go ride in the city or ride in town or go ride on the interstate. So ride in different environments. Go ride your bike down some dirt roads. I do that all the time. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I'm constantly sending my motorcycles down gravel and dirt roads. Like I said earlier, I really like doing that on a bicycle, and well, turns out I really like doing it on a motorcycle too. But go ride in different environments. All of that different riding will sort of push you to be a better rider as you navigate those different challenges. Another thing that has helped me out is just talking to people sort of outside of my motorcycling discipline. If I only ever talk to Harley people, then I would only ever really learn how to ride like a Harley person. I think that there is a lot to be gained by talking to people outside of your motorcycle community.
For instance, I have a good friend named Anthony. He and I have known each other for probably close to 12 years now. We met through drag racing air-cooled Volkswagens. Anthony is really into sport bikes, street bikes, whatever you want to call them, at a very high level. In fact, he's involved with Army of Darkness, which is a factory-supported endurance motorcycle race team. They are supported by Yamaha. They race a pair of Yamaha R1s. I forget who their corporate tire sponsor is this season, but he gives me a lot of good advice about learning to ride a motorcycle, and I've even gone to one of their races and hung out in the pits with those guys. And just being able to talk to riders of that caliber and pick their brains a little bit, they will give you some really good advice. Some advice they've given me that's been good and helped me just feel more confident in handling a bike through the turns is, in addition to looking where you want to go, ride on the balls of your feet on the pegs, and then sort of point your toe and your knee in the direction you want to go. And this will sort of encourage your body to come off of the seat and off of the tank and lean into the curves a little bit. On a Harley, you can only lean so much before you're dragging the pegs, but this piece of advice is actually really good for me in traffic circles and sort of tight, steady leaning turns. We have a lot of twisty sort of country back roads here where I live in rural upstate South Carolina. Sometimes you're making a turn like against yourself. It's beyond 90 degrees, so you're turning back. And that advice has been really good for me in those sort of situations. Other things that they have suggested is using 2 fingers on the brake and the clutch lever, that this gives you sort of more control and a softer touch. This is something I was already doing because I was doing 2-finger braking on mountain bikes for the same reason. It just gives you a little bit finer control versus just grabbing a whole handful of brake or a whole handful of clutch. But they sort of reinforce that, like, yeah, that's a good habit to be in. The other thing is the whole idea of counter steering, which is if you're going down the road on a motorcycle, and this is where I wish my GoPro wasn't broken, because this is so much easier to show than it is tell. But there's some good videos here on YouTube about this. You could look them up. Look up counter steering on a motorcycle or something like that. I'm sure you'll find a video. Anyways, if you're going down a road straight on a motorcycle and you push on the right handlebar, the motorcycle is going that direction. If you pull on your right handlebar, you're going the other way. If you push and pull the bars, you'll figure it out pretty quickly, and it really doesn't take much. You can push and pull that bike across the lane pretty easily with like 1 finger. Again, I wish my GoPro was working so I could show this to y'all instead of just tell you this, but there's some great videos on it and you can play with it. This is really useful for learning how to sort of push a bike into a curve, and then as you're standing the bike back up coming out of a curve, pushing on that opposite handlebar to stand the thing back up while you simultaneously get your weight back over the center line of the bike versus hanging off the side. Again, for all my Harley folks, you know, this doesn't apply quite so much to us, but it is still good stuff to know and to try and incorporate into your riding. This might make the difference between going to ride Tail of the Dragon with your motorcycle club and, being on the road looking at the scenery versus being in the scenery looking back at the road. So I would encourage you to just, reach out to folks who are not necessarily the type of people you would normally ride with, because chances are you can learn something from them. That's a common theme and a common thread on this channel, is always be learning. I've talked about this before in my video about being a better mechanic. I've been a mechanic way longer than I've been a motorcycle rider, and I still learn new stuff every day. So that's actually where I want to wrap this video up. I hope you've learned something watching this video. If you're a new rider, I hope some of this has been useful for you, coming from someone else who's a new rider. I hope some of this has been like real world, practical, useful knowledge. And like I said at the start of the video, if you're an experienced rider and you think I've said something wrong or you think I've left something out, let me know. And yeah, we can all learn and grow together. I think that's a pretty cool thing. So that's where I'm going to end this episode. I appreciate all of y'all watching. I'll see you on the next one.